Welcome to a poker video where I will go through the timeline in which I played the game, different strategies that I came up with. So without further ado, and trying to make this relatively quick because there's a lot to go over, let's get started. Early in this decade, roughly around 2010, 2011, maybe even as late as 2012 or 2012, not 2013. I took thousands and thousands, maybe even tens of thousands. I played a lot of cash games, and I put them in the database with a simple condition: total plus minus of overall results. That's what you're looking for whomever opened the pot pre-flop. So in any spots where no one raised, those hands never count. But whoever raised it first was winning. I then took what I was winning when I raised first, and I subtracted it from what other players were winning, and it was still good results. And many other stats showing that this playing on calling, well, that was bad. Betting was good. I really had to change a couple aspects of my game, and it all referred to when I called raises where I probably shouldn't have. Now looking back, well back further, when did I first realize I was good at the game? And I was around 12 to 13 years old. I was playing a game with my cousin and uncle, both around 16 to 17 years old. And during the final betting round of a game, it was my turn to act, and I had the worst ranked hand that the game had. There was no way I could win. The best I could do was tie someone else who had the same hand as me, and well, you know they don't have that. So I put a bet out, and both players folded. And I can remember to this day thinking, this is a damn good strategy. Because I was back at the time most likely thinking, well, I can't win at it if I check, and I'm certainly not going to call anybody's bet. And I pretty much figured out the art of bluffing, and then things would roll on from there. Over the next few years, with sports gambling becoming legal in the early 1990s, roughly around the Ottawa Senators' first season in the league, I would play some of that, and I would also play poker every now and again whenever I could. Family games were easy because I would usually always win. Gambling was a big problem with my mom's family, and my dad's family hardly gambled at all, so I basically played with my mom's family. I knew as a kid that if one is to win at such, you need to be good. I've seen problem gamblers documentaries, a lot of them. I've seen interesting things within my family, and unfortunately, maybe a little too many as well. And in the casino, I have profiled many problem gamblers as well in my later years for playing live. That is something that not only do I need to focus on, but at many times you have no choice, because when you see some players tilt or do some outrageous things, then that's just part of the game. And I haven't played at the live casino in over a decade, but I would only presume it'd be similar to where it was at the start or the decade previous. Fast forwarding many years, as it is December the 31st, 2002. And the stakes rose pretty high for me, as I was playing games where there were $50 and $50 were common for one to bet in a particular hand, which was really large. And just continuously having this gentleman putting at $5 and $10, $15 bets at one time, I found really interesting. And this is like the largest pot since I remember playing Lou sometime in the mid-1990s, a game where a $2 or $1 game became like a $70, $100, $150 game. It's a crazy game, but throwing that part aside, I was intimidated by this player, but I love today just doing such. And at this point in my life, I wasn't working. I was working before at a job that paid $10 an hour, but barely able to get by. Tried to get a promotion raise because I figured that I was by far one of the best they had at what I did. They kind of delayed it. I knew they were going to do it in time, but then later on I got a job that paid $19 an hour, so I had to take it. But I only worked a few weeks and they laid me off, and well, after doing such, here I'm getting paid more after getting laid off than I was with my first job. It was very interesting. I was getting paid maybe 15% more because of the unemployment, working with the $19 an hour and how that affected it. And back then, that was a lot when you're talking the early 2000s. And then sometime in the following year, I would probably imagine it would have been spring to summer, was the discovery of online poker. Before, on different sites, I remember finding a place where you could play poker, and there was like 7 to 20 games I never heard of, like Cincinnati, and I still don't know how to play it because, well, then was the only time I did. But those were like sites like Poker Stars and such. And in 2003, Party Poker was, well, I think was the biggest site then, and I played there. And after starting off, it got addictive from moment one. It was a rush that I've only ever gotten from, we'll say, other medicines and loopy medicines. 3 or 4 times it felt the exact same. That's how much of a rush it originally gave me. But I never heard of Texas Hold'em before this, so I was learning that game, and I was losing at that game. Back then, it was very easy to get into 7-star stud games. So after losing some sit and goes in Texas Hold'em, I would then go to sit and goes and stud, and about 3 or 4 times, my bankroll will go from, like, I can't remember what I deposited, probably about $25 to $50. But when it got relatively low, if I lost half or 60%, I'd play only sit and goes and 7 stud, and I'd usually win. And then I'd get back up and I'd go back to Hold'em because it was a more fun game. And then with the whole no limit thing, even early on, once I'm like, well, I can go all in pre-flop, and I did, and everyone folded, and, well, we'll talk more about that later on. And throughout that 2003 year, I managed to get back to work, I think, at the start of the year. It was around January 15th or 20th. I would have, and then through most of the year, I probably worked, of the 52 weeks, like 40 of them, and it was sweet because sometimes on Friday you were hoping that your name would say you were laid off. But then came the final layoff where you knew it was going to be such. The company was moving to Mexico. For me, an economic collapse. So now I'm living off of the investments that I have. In 2005, I got a new part-time job. Unfortunately, I didn't have too many hours, getting 3 to 4 shifts per week, or 24 to 32 hours working 8-hour days. PokerStars was getting popular, and I tried to build a bankroll with absolutely nothing, and I was close, as they have play money, and quite frankly, that was about the easiest game I ever played. And back then, there were people that would buy your play money. So I was able to get free $20, $50, $10, $20 over and over and over again. But unfortunately, every time I was able to try from such, my bankroll would go to zero. I got it from like 50 to 200 once, or 250, and I lost it. And then I made a deposit, probably around $50, and I didn't need another. As the summer was coming to an end, I was able to withdraw and play on other sites because I was mainly winning, building a bankroll from $50 to 100, 200, 300, and so on. So I thought, well, let's also play on another site. And I made a final table there which boosted my bankroll. But there is no way I could have ever reached such of a nice result had I not done or played the big blind special. This is a name I gave it, and I still, to this day, whenever I do play, will use this when the situation comes up. And within it, this works well, or you do this when you know the players, whether it be online or live. For when you know somebody will make this a bad play, you don't do it. So the more you know, the better off you're going to be. So when the first couple positions fold, then and no one raises, you have maybe a few limpers. People, not back then, more people would limp in compared to today. This, of course, is going back to 2005, so this is 13 years ago. The game has changed. And then you just go all in. So assuming the blinds are 500 and 1,000, so you have 4 limpers, maybe that's 4,000. and then or 4 people including a big blind. Maybe you have like a 5,000 pot with antes. So if you have 10,000, 20,000, 24,000, then it's going to be very difficult for these players to make the call. And again, if first 2 positions, if you know, say, that somebody does call there and you know they just call a whole bunch of garbage hands all the time, well, then you know you can still do it. Because nobody's coming in with that great of hands, so you're expecting low pairs, the ace jacks, and all of the weaker but not great holdings to be limping in. So this happened in a tournament, and I think this would have been after the bubble, but in the early stages, I might have been before. Either way, I was a long ways away from being at a good cash. I think I had about 75%-ish of what chip average was, maybe at least 2/3. And this play came up, there was about 4 limpers or so, and well, I go all in, and I had a trash hand. I had like 9-4 or something really bad. And I get called. And I got called by ace king, and I won the hand. And within the next 6, 7, 8 hands, 9 hands, I got 2 good pots off him and eliminated him. As he ended up tilting, next thing you know, with like, I don't know, maybe 70, 80 people left, I'm in like 4th place, 5th, 6th place. And I was able to maintain that until, of course, the final table, where I can't remember what I finished, 4th, 5th, or 6th, but it made my bankroll go much higher, where I was able to increase my stakes. As we moved to mid-September 2005, the remnants of Hurricane Katrina hits Lake Ontario, and I'm literally working on the shorelines of such. And it was one of the worst working nights because of the weather conditions, and it was just very difficult having to move around the factory in which I had to do my hourly rounds and such. But when I was in there, I was reading Doyle Brunson's Super System, and it was maybe the best book ever, and I've ended up after that reading about maybe 20 to 30 other poker books, with Dan Harrington's trilogy definitely coming in second. And I was also around this time making trips to Casino Rama, because I had a thing every other Thursday, so twice a month I was able to go up for $3. I get a bus ride for what would take 3 hours to get there. Be able to play for about 7 hours, and then 6 to 7 hours, I think it was 7, and then go home. And then that also gave me a free lunch as well. So I figured, well, I can use that few extra hour time. I could read a book on the way up, like the Super System, and at that point I probably was holding 5 or 6 other different poker books, including books about tells, and I even had videos on such. So I would bring a little miniature TV or to put a DVD in, even get different videos that I can find, and just use that time as I would to improve my game on like a school educational style level or out of practice. I would play the $1, $2 game there, as that was the smallest game they had, and it was a little bit of higher stakes to start with the 200 for me, because if I lost a couple hands, that would have been a little devastating, but that was not the case. I usually would end up winning, and any other time I had a chance to go up there, I would end up playing. But this was the closest casino that would have a no-limit cash games, and 3 hours or 2.5 hours by car, 3 hours by bus. Took a while to get there. Ending that year and going into 2006 is where it got very, very volatile. After having a not so moving session, or things just barely going up or down on the long term over the end of the year, I had a streak where I was just winning very well, and my bankroll just went in a nice straight up session. But right after that ended, it had a couple days where I was giving a lot of it back. It got to the point with pocket aces, I really had to find a different way of playing them differently than everybody else, and from this point on, I'm glad I have. I'm not going to go over on that interesting strategy, as that is very unique, but I ended up withdrawing some funds with one key thought to help moving forward. If I could win starting with $50, could I win with the higher number? Meaning, if you have a bankroll falling from, like, say, $5,000 to $3,000, are you confident you can win? You did it with 50. Could you do it with 3,000? So in situations like that, that oftentimes I would think that like maybe 20, 40 different times over when bad events happened. By the middle part of the year, I was able to build up a very good bankroll where I was able to just always have a decent amount of cash on me now, which was always nice to have. Summer was not so good because I really didn't lose that much, but I obviously didn't win in the summer. July and August were I probably would have lost maybe 10-15% of my bankroll. I did go to the casino one summer or early fall night expecting to lose and win at the same time, and I was very successful. It was one of those days where I took another bus trip and I knew they were running satellites for a tournament. Satellites costing $200 to play, a single table tournament. The winner of an 11-player tournament got the seat, and second to fourth got subsidiary small prizes. And I put myself on the name to play the game, and the reason why I thought I would lose was because, well, if I'm going to win that satellite, it's going to cost me $200. Am I going to win that on a cash game while I play less time on it? So they called my name to play the tournament. I was running low on time because I realized that I had to make sure I got the bus home, so I had to cancel it at a certain time, so that just for those obvious reasons. But it worked out that when the tournament played, I sat down, and an hour and change later, I won it, and I got my seat into a big tournament. I ended up winning about $60 on the cash game, so I ended up losing about $140. But I have my seat into a $1,000 tournament. I also took a promo to get free books, and that ended up building a massive bankroll moving forward in the end of the year. But before then, I hit a much needed straight flush in that tournament in which I won the satellite too. And what occurred was it was about 4 hours into the day one of a 2-day tournament, and within such I wasn't getting much and wasn't getting any spots here and there. I was fortunate enough to be able to double up in the first hour and then be able to keep things moving on. But I was very short stacked. I might have had 12 to 13, 14 big blinds. And I had good position somewhere near the button. And here was a spot where someone could have done the big blind strategy because there was like 5 limpers or 4 limpers to me. And I had 7-8 suited. And I'm thinking to myself, what do I do here? I mean, I could fold, but I don't think I want to. I mean, I can't really afford too much, but I mean, one big blind, do I really want to limp in? Do I want to go all in? And I decided to call. I don't call too often, but this was one time where I think a call is right when several people limp before you and you just joined the family pot. So with 7-8 suited, the flop came up 9, 5, and another heart. I have a flush. And I have a gut shot straight flush draw. Somebody in one of the blinds puts out a bet. It might have been an all-in bet. At least my effective stat. And obviously I call. And this player also had a flush, but a king-high flush. So I was behind. My 6 of hearts came on the river. But when I was thinking about the play, when I seen him lead, I was thinking, you know what? They say never go in drawing dead. I got a straight flush draw. So if he happens to have a flush, then I could win. And well, he did, and he did have a flush, and I did win. I had a weird feeling like I knew it was coming. Like everyone always says that, and I don't usually get that. Usually I'd be getting my coat and ready to leave, but I didn't do that there. Moving on to another New Year's Eve, and I ended up min-cashing that tournament where I ended up with like 8 to 9 big blinds by the end of day one. And if you made day 2, you cashed, and I was out on the first hand. I had ace-10 suited. I didn't want to play either. I figured I'm probably dominated. But I got 8 big blinds, and I got ace-10 suited. I was up against pocket aces and lost. So I had a min-cash. On December the 31st, my theory was, you know what? This is New Year's Eve. There's going to be a lot of drunk people. This is where a lot of profit can be had. I was normally playing 2-4-400. But I figured with the bankroll that I had, I could easily play several 3-6 games, as I'd already managed to get it north of, many, many buy-ins above that. And Daryl Dickin was who I happened to be sitting beside. I had position on him in one of the rooms. But this was a room I still remember because Daryl Dickin is an online pro and live pro. And when playing with him, we never really got in hands too often, but I could tell that he really respected my play on that night. And I used that to my advantage within the last hour or so of the session, but that managed to get me back a pot or two that I was down from in the early sessions. But we both sat in with 600. I think we both left with like 2,400 or something like that, as we were just really racking up or destroying the tables, people coming in and out. So the four other people that would play at the six-player table were losing to both of us that night. It was a really, really fun night. And of course, when you're in a situation like this, now you're in the spot where you're like, okay, yeah, I got like 300 and some odd big blinds, and so do you. So it was interesting when you got to play a pot with them. Of course, I never did manage that. I've had a few situations where I've been able to build like 300 or 400 pots up and win some big pots. I can't remember ever losing a 300 blind pot though, which probably means I never did. And I was usually at this point making a few $100s per day. This is where it was just becoming easy. I've had situations where I'd win like it was like a 250 player tournament. I won it back to back, at least to a degree. I mean, they had like one Thursday or one Tuesday or whatever night it was. I would play a tournament, then I'd win a good four-figure score, and then the next week I'd do it again, and I'd win another similar kind of score. It was, I think, about a $25 rebuy tournament. And it was at the point where it's like, oh man, this is just getting like so easy. And it was aggressive play, of course, working out well. I've been to other casinos. I go to the 3 casinos in Niagara Falls. The Blue Heron Casino would have tournaments now and again, but other than that, it's not a great casino. And then in a good casino, but not for games, was another one in. We're an hour west of Toronto somewhere, Brantford or Burlington, somewhere around there. And it was fun just having, because I had the availability to do so, and it was another venture to be able to play games as well. Overall, I don't know how much I would have been able to profit, because when you rack up the cost for transportation and hotels, you need to win. In 2007, as I went through a major change within the year, I did have a night where I played heads up, and I think I won about 14 or 15 consecutive games in a row. While I would increase my stakes, probably starting around $5 to $10, finishing off at $200 a game. Because after winning 10, I'd go to 20, 50. It's a mathematical way of playing the game. I'm one for increasing stakes during rushes and decreasing them on the opposite. A lot of people do the opposite. But when I am in a rush, oftentimes I'll, like, if I win like $800, I'll like take maybe 200 of it, 100 of it, and maybe play a tournament or do this and try to do something to keep it going, kind of deal, realizing that I can only do so much of it. Okay, I was up 800. I tried this for 150. It lost. I'm going to take the 650 night gain and go to bed. But in this, it got to the point where I'm like, man, I'm getting so tired. I think I started playing like around maybe 10 or 11 at night. And I never lost until like 4 or 5 in the morning. And I almost did just end playing because it was just getting so tiring. So once I lost my first game, I just ended the night. There was one night when I was at a casino, and I decided, where am I going to have dinner? And I wish I didn't choose to have dinner at the hotel, and that I could have just stayed at the casino, found it, and ate one of the restaurants. Because I figured while I was at the casino, I would check the internet to see if my favorite poker player was online, which he was, playing a large $5, $10 game. And he was the reason why I was at the hotel, as I would probably have profited 3 to 4 times that amount off of him coming in. And he was a wild, aggressive, really bad player. But it got to a situation where I was trying to trap him, like everybody else probably was at the table as well. I had ace-king. I ended up making an all-in play on him, but it ended up being a 3-way pot. Somebody else called with pocket aces, and that person won $2,000 profit, and the other person had jack-10 suited. Willing to risk $1,000 on that hand pre-flop. So I ended up, and I think I had like I don't know, something like $800 or $600 in my account left. I had like 16 or 1800 coming in, and I just ended up withdrawing it and just whatever it was. And then I went back to the casino. I was playing $2, $5 for $500 to hold at the casino, but because of this loss, I immediately reduced my stakes down to $1, $2, 200 just for a little while, just to make sure that I'm not going to steam, or I'm not going to give myself a chance to have any big losses. Because if I lost like 2, 3, 400, losing 400 on the 1-2 would be hard to do. It would be a lot easier compared to losing, say, 7, 800 more, which could happen at the 2-5 game at the time. But I was going through a psyche change, mainly in May of 2007. And that's when I really stopped playing a lot of poker from really that point on until now. And to this day, I rarely play, but it was fun. I haven't been to the casino since April or May of 2008. I'll probably venture back at one point. I wanted to play in the World Series of Poker. I ended up not doing so. And when they've changed it since, but once they changed it so that you had to wait till November to play the final table, that's when I really stopped ever wanting to play that tournament, because that's just something to me that's not cool. However, I did come close one time. I think it would have been in 2006 for that World Series, where it might have been the 2007 as one as well. Either one. I was in a tournament, a $200 buy-in tournament, where the top 3 advanced, and I came in 11th place. And I ended up losing with Jack versus Ace King. But only because the poker site was too good at protecting players with bad internet. For I was in a different room where I had to, many feet away from where the internet server was. And I had problems with the internet. It was down for a while, so I had to go and move back to closer to where the Wi-Fi signal would come from. It took about 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And I come back and I have 2 jacks. And unfortunately, they didn't fold my hand because they gave me extra time. I think I delayed the game maybe 3 to 4 minutes. I don't know how long, but for a while. Then I went all in and I was eliminated. So if they would have folded my hand automatically, I don't know what would have happened. But that was that. And I want to finish this off by talking about a poker tournament that doesn't exist, that really frustrates me, because I don't know why it doesn't exist. Whenever you hear of poker tournaments, it's always heads up, and well, in online you play and then you might win and you have to wait forever for round 2. This idea is different. It worked like a regular tournament and have late registration, all that kind of stuff. And whenever you eliminate somebody, let's assume that you're at a casino or you do this online, either way, and there's 300 tables, so 600 people start off. So if someone gets eliminated, that means somebody would have like twice the chips they started with. What would that person do? Well, they'd have to wait for either another elimination or a late reg player to sit in. And then that would keep on going until the end of the tournament. Then when playing live, every maybe 30 to 45 minutes, you would change seats. So you would play somebody else. On internet, maybe every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, you would get a different opponent. And that would keep on going through, and your chip stack would just keep on going up and down like a normal poker tournament would. So if everyone were to start with 5,000 poker chips and there was 1,000 people, well, when there's 100 people left, the average would be 50,000. And when there's 10 people left, the average would be 500,000 people or 500,000 chips. And it would be simple to manage the final 10 players, because if there's 10 players left, then there's 5 games going on. When someone gets eliminated, you'd be down to 9, and you could only have 4 games. So in spots like that, there'd always be one person waiting for the next game, and then every so many minutes, then if nobody gets eliminated, then you just have a player that would, in turn, someone else would just have to play the sidelines for like 15 minutes, especially when people need breaks anyway. You got like a 15-minute segments going live where you have to wait for someone to get eliminated before you can play. And then if it doesn't go through, then John will take a 15-minute break and so on and so forth. And when you're down to 7, same thing. If you're down to 3 players, then it would definitely have to work out in a form within that level where you would, and then once you get down to the final 2, it would be the end of the tournament, and you could pay like you would a normal poker tournament. So if there's 1,000 people, maybe you pay 130th to 80th this place, and then you pay 10th this, and 9th, and then 8th, and 7th, and all the way to the top prize. But this would be a better way of playing a heads-up poker tournament than the ways that I have seen before. And to me, it's unfortunate that these don't exist, because when I see in the World Series of Poker, they have their heads-up tournament. I mean, this would be a better format. And of course, on the internet, it would be so much easier as well, as it normally is anyway. So thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, please feel free to tune in. If you've searched this via poker, I normally don't talk about this. This is mainly a crypto trading related channel. But I thought that I would share this, as this is a game where only few people can win. But if you're good enough and smart enough, then you can be one of those winners yourself. Have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.